Welcome to WITI Talks Diversity and Inclusion. We recently talked with Joannie Fu, Vice President of Network and Edge Group at Intel, about her role, her career journey, and her perspectives on diversity and inclusion at Intel. We hope you enjoy the conversation. Can you tell us about your role at Intel?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm the VP of Intel's Network and Edge, and I run the worldwide operations to accelerate execution. A little bit about, I'm going to go into a little techie talk, so forgive me for that, but Intel Network and Edge deploys technology that moves data from the cloud through the network to the edge, connecting everyone on Earth seamlessly and securely within 5G network, Wi-Fi, public internet, private internet, or you can even think about factory and retail automation. Good example to think about our technology is when someone uploads their video or their photo onto social media, or when they are transacting with the bank online, or they're streaming videos to their home, or even when you're working, just like what we're doing right now. You're probably using one of our technologies right now. And so very, very proud of being part of this group and very, very, very happy to be here. So think about what I just talked about, right? Uploading all those data and driving all those technology. There are a million little decisions that need to be made. What kind of data bits do we use? What kind of photo do we use? How long does each one of those items come through? So my role is to ensure that we synergize those decisions for the best possible customer experience in that process. So that is really my role, is making a million little decisions to make sure that all of those become seamless.
Can you tell us about some of your top goals?
So my top goal right now is optimizing our infrastructure and overall our investment. One of the things that is very challenging, going back to the millions of little decisions, is you know you're making the right decision. What is the quality behind the decision? What are the data sets that I need to make those decisions actually smartly, wisely, and also that's long-term, both long-term and short-term, for the benefit of the business. So my number one item that I'm working on right now is actually data analytics for our division, is creating the data architecture for us to make those decisions. As simple as, how do we call ourselves? As simple as, how do we convert our project names so that there's a way for us to analyze our data up to 5 years from now? What does that data look like? How do I know I'm making the right portfolio decision? Number two is the people and the culture. As you astutely pointed out, Rose, we are a new division. So how do we create that culture and org identity for this group so that they understand and actually come to work every day with their hearts and mind excited and motivated, because they understand the vision of connecting everybody seamlessly, cost effectively, and securely together on the planet.
And what are some of your biggest challenges?
I think the biggest challenge that we have is we have a whole set of parts. And what I mean parts is like silicon parts, platform parts, different ingredient, different components. But we don't really have a common platform in which to actually drive the optimization into scale. So what we're doing right now is creating that platform and that what we call a substrate, in which everyone and all those things come together in a seamless way. So we have great technology, but the great technology can only be wonderful if it can be seamless and it can be completely invisible to the consumers. But when it's clicking and it's, kind of, what's the word, clunky, then it's not actually doing its job. So that's our biggest challenge. How do we scale? How do we optimize? And how do we ensure that we have that common platform to deliver the product?
Switching gears, can you tell us what has been the most important for you as a leader of the LGBT plus community at Intel?
I joined Intel 22 years ago. And when I looked up at that time, there was zero role model for me. That's someone that's out, that's comfortable in their skin, and that's willing to actually impart their experience on how to get ahead and progress within that. So part of my goal when I set that out, when I looked at that and I go, I need to be that first person, or I need to go help somebody to be that first person to be out. It took me 22 years to get to a VP level where I was completely out throughout my entire career. But what I'm so proud of when I think about that is I'm giving people hope. a visible role model, that I am one of the first, if not the first, openly out employee at Intel that's been promoted as a VP in its 50 plus year history. So that is something that I'm super proud of when I think about being part of the LGBTQ community, and I want to bring more on. I want to make sure that we have that platform, and I can continue to bring more of our LGBTQ plus employees along.
2019 was a big year for you. You were named Intel's Working Mother of the Year and Intel's Inclusive Leader of the Year. Why was that important to you?
I think that points to intersectionality, right? A lot of times when we think about diversity and inclusion, we think of ourselves as within a one dimension. Look at the Working Mother Award. If you look at the Inclusive Leader and what Intel's doing, I am gay, and that's usually the platform and the visibility that I drive, because I know I'm one of the few that is willing to take that risk with my career and my life on that. But I'm also a mother. I'm also a first generation immigrant. That English is my second language, and that experience is very different. I am a woman. I'm also someone that grew up in a techie world that has a generational gap, that as I'm going through, in my 20 plus year experience, I'm learning also that I am a different generation. I'm learning different things. So bring that whole thing together, and that's a great question. Why? Because we need to understand that human beings, and when we talk about diversity and inclusion, it is the whole package. It cannot be separated and actually be in little compartments. It has to be together. So it is super important that when I think about being gay, being openly out, but also bring along my other identities and actually show that I can be all that, and I can be representing all those communities. While I choose that LGBT plus is my platform, it doesn't take away my other identities, right? And so that's the most important piece when I think about those other, I would say, communities I represent.
How do you bridge the roles between executives at Intel and being a working mother?
I will say that I am very, very fortunate that I have a partner that absolutely supports me in that. But let me give you an example of what I mean about intersectionality as well. Let me bring that theme and tear that apart a little bit, right? Because I'm in a same-sex relationship, the gender role and the conformation of this gender role actually blurs a lot. There is no such thing as you're the breadwinner and you must do housework. There's almost this negotiation that always comes between me and my partner where, yeah, I do have to balance that. So I'm very fortunate to be with Intel, where Intel is absolutely supportive of the flexibility. I would start my work around 6 a.m. in the morning, my day, but then usually I would take time off around 3 o'clock to have tea with my daughter, who's 14 years old right now, just to hear she's back from school. And I just want to know, hey, how was your day? Let's talk about it. And then we'll have dinner together. Then by 6 o'clock, I get back onto the phone with my Asia team and make sure that the Asia team is worked through, and then I'll work until 9 o'clock, right? So that balance also gives me empathy to a lot of women and working parents. Not all parents, when I say parents, I don't mean just female, but going back to the gender role question, I also met a lot of male colleagues that tells me that they enjoy the work from home, and as well as the flexibility that Intel offers. And giving that empathy to the working parents becomes super important for us to have that sense of belonging and that culture and that inclusivity.
What are some ways companies can approach inclusion as a conscious practice?
That's an awesome, profound question. I think authenticity and inclusion is about people, putting people first. Respect all talent and all experience. I will give a quote that our legendary, our leader, Andy Bryan, had said, and then I'll break it down into 3 tips I would give. The ingredient we start in doing these technologies are sand. Everything else is what people bring to the table. So without inclusion, without authenticity, without really respecting people, all we get is sand, really, at Intel. And so that is the beauty of the inclusive culture that Intel has, is that we're adding magic to sand to create these semiconductor technologies. So 3 tips that I would give about conscious inclusive practice. Number 1, situational leadership. Really, the sense of belonging and driving that inclusivity is about understanding other people's perspective And I'm learning that right now as well as I'm working through building my team out and really understand what people's perspective are and ask a lot of questions. I will give an example. Actually, I was talking to somebody and I accidentally used an unfortunate example of saying, oh yeah, our org split, it was like a divorce. And I thought I was really, not harmful or anything. But what I didn't realize is that amongst the team members, there was a person that's going through a tough divorce. And that was a very inappropriate example for me to use. But I was talking about divorce in terms of the mental and the physical and the psychological transition that we all have to go through when I was talking about that org split. But what I didn't realize that there was somebody that was going through a personal divorce, and that was actually absolutely not the right thing to do. And so I did have to apologize. And this is actually a tip, which is you gotta be able to reflect and learn and have an accountability buddy, right? And how did I find out? Somebody else called me on it and said, Joanie, did you know this is happening? I said, oh, I absolutely do not know that. That was a very private thing. But now I know it. I was very, very embarrassed. And I do need to go apologize. So having an accountability buddy to call things out like that is so important. But it goes back to trust too, right? That understanding of people's perspective and creating that openness that people are able to approach you and say, hey, you messed up. And I got to fess up when I mess up, right? And so that's important to have that authenticity and that humbleness to say, I made a mistake, I will learn, and I will reflect on that. But going back to that second tip that I want to talk about, and is that bias. I love the word you use, conscious, because we all have unconscious bias. And so we need to be conscious of the bias that we have, just like I just told that story about that. And so that's something that we got to work on as well. So those are the 3 tips: situational leadership, understanding people's perspective, really check your unconscious bias, and have an accountability buddy to actually learn and reflect, and being able to admit to mistakes. It's okay to have that grace.
Can you talk about self-ID and what it means to Intel's culture?
Yeah, so at Intel, I was talking about intersectionality. That actually falls into that particular category as well. So let me give a little background on the self-ID and the inclusion survey we've been doing. So since 2018, we've had surveys around Intel on measuring our inclusivity and really understanding the employees' experience of inclusion at Intel and what is our culture transformation looking like. And I am very, very proud to say that 90% of Intel employees have affirmed that they believe Intel is an open and safe and inclusive workplace to be. Very, very proud of that data. However, if you dig down just a tiny bit lower, you'll see that there are pockets of invisible disability community, visible disability community, LGBT plus community, as well as the veteran community, have a slightly different experience. In fact, in some of the questions, we saw a 20% drop in some of the items that people are experiencing on career progression, or do they have visible role model. So I am a proponent of self-ID, not because I'm nosy, that's not the reason, but the reason is to aggregate the data and actually fine-tuning our program and our policy and our process so that we truly improve and truly increase the sense of belonging in our workplace, so that, yes, we're happy about the 90%, but let's continuously improve and continue to go on this journey together.
Do you speak at technology industry conferences on diversity and inclusion topics?
Yeah, so I do. I actually speak in many, many conferences in regards to technology, and most of the extent is in regards to LGBTQ plus community. But I also intersperse some of the AI ethics in there. Think about this. Right now, facial recognition is something that everybody's working on as part of the artificial intelligence, right? But here's the question. When a person who's androgynous shows up, and the AI recognizes that person as male or female, it does change how that person's perceived. And in fact, when you think about that, right, it changes how that person is actually treated as well in the AI world. And so I find that fascinating. And it is something that Intel is also taking leadership on, is how do we ensure that our technology is ethical and equitable in our diversity and inclusion. So we are not just practicing it in our workplace, but also inserting it into our technology.
You have an interesting story about mentorship. Can you share that with us?
So when I joined Intel 22 years ago, I was scared. I was scared to come out. I was scared to be myself. I was scared because I don't know what's going to happen. So in my first one-on-one with my brand new manager, never met him. I was, recruited in, and I'm meeting him for the first time in there. I told him, I said, Mike, I'd like to start up an employee resource group for the LGBTQ group here on site. I want to make a difference here, but I also want you to treat me as a normal person. I don't want to be treated differently. He looked at me and he said, Joannie, why do you want to be ordinary when you can be extraordinary? Be who you want to be and go drive that. That changed my life from the perspective of he does not see me as abnormal or subpar or below. He actually sees me as someone that's special, that's unique, and that's talented, and that can bring so much good to the world. And with that, even though it was before allyship or advocacy was a fancy word, he became that person that inspired me to be extraordinary in everything I do, which then also culminates to the fact that when the org announcement went out of me becoming a VP, I insisted a sentence to be added that I am one of the first out executive at Intel.
Can you tell us what being extraordinary means to you?
It's about giving hope at the end of the day, right? If you think about that, it's the hope that we can then move on and continue to drive so that even this is a long journey, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, the hope of actually continuing to be extraordinary and doing good is a very important message that Mike has given me. Yeah, so I always ask for extraordinary results, something that's uniquely only you can deliver. Deep quality results that only you as a person can deliver. That's extraordinary in that. So I'll give you an example. I was working with my team member on a particular proposal, and the proposal was very conservative when it first came to me. And I reviewed it with the team, and then I pulled the leader aside, and I said, I'd like to understand if you could have anything, unlimited resources, unlimited time, unlimited team, what would this look like? And the person's eye lit up and started giving me all these things that they believe this could do. I said, then do that. Put that in the proposal. Don't be afraid to be extraordinary. I will help you. I will make sure that you will get what you need to get to that extraordinary result. But don't hold back, because you will miss every shot that you don't take if you don't make that proposal. And we did. When we went with the proposal, and we got what we needed to actually do the project a lot more ambitious than the original conservative proposal. That's an example of being extraordinary and actually uplifting that extraordinary to everyone around me.
What are some concerns people have shared about becoming more authentic or extraordinary?
I think the biggest thing that I see, and I'll use the LGBT plus community for that, is what if I get attacked? What if my progression is stalemate or stalled because I'm being authentic or when I'm trying to be extraordinary, right? And that is a very big fear, right? The fear of failure, the fear of risk. And when we ask people to do self-ID, we are asking them to give a piece of themselves into the system. If you think about that, if I use that analogy, they're giving a piece of their soul to the system to help us drive that bigger goal. So it is a very big mindset change, and it is a personal risk that people have to weigh in on it. I don't apply pressure, Rose, but I do want to make sure that when I speak with people about being extraordinary, as you astutely just mentioned, it's about the small steps and the big steps. Can't have extraordinary results if you don't take the little steps along the way with that. But that fear of failure and that risk taking that we're asking people to do is a very, very big challenge. But I firmly believe the goodness of self-ID and the goodness of fine-tuning, because when we stand up and be counted, when we are firmly standing together, that's when good things happen.
Any final thoughts you want to leave with our audience?
I just want to let the listeners know out there that paying it forward is the most important concept and principle in all of the diversity and inclusion within the women community, within the LGBTQ community, within this entire intersectionality. When we consider that we're all standing on top of the shoulders of giants before us, it is so important that we continue to pay it forward. Thank you.